15 episodes before, and then we get to and then we'll redo Mel and do his history and recording in his band, and then we'll turn around probably and get to some of the lesser known folks who we haven't gotten to.
Yeah.
So we're talking a lot more of these, and that's great because the response has been absolutely overwhelming. By the way, the phone number here is 212-854-5223 if you'd like to call, 212-854-5223. And, of course, need I remind jazz listeners that the Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra is at the Village Vanguard every Monday night. Mel, who will be filling in for you for the next couple of weeks?
Oh, I got next week, I guess the people, do they know we're going to Japan?
We're going to Japan tomorrow morning with a Gunther Schuller band.
A Gunther Schuller organized Duke Ellington tribute band.
Yeah.
And which Lauren and I are going to be the co-leaders of that band. So Dennis McCrell, who I think is a wonderful young drummer, he's had good big band experience with Basie's band and all that. And he was out with Woody's band recently. He's playing for me next week, and I think you'll enjoy it because the band, of course, the band always sounds good, no matter who's on drums, and they help the drummer. And of course, I try to get the finest young drummers I can find.
Yeah, and you've had them.
Yeah, and following Dennis will be Kenny Washington, who I really feel a lot about. I think he's going to develop into a fine big band drummer. He's already a wonderful small group drummer.
Yeah. So that's what's going to be happening down there. Then Mel will be back, I guess, on the...
I'll be back August the 10th.
Yeah.
I'll be back in New York.
Yeah. All right, so back the following Monday after that. And, all right, that's pretty much the schedule there. Well, right now we turn from Louis Bellson to Elvin Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just begin with early Elvin Jones, and then we'll start talking because Mel is a relation of Elvin's.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
And we'll listen to something from the Village Vanguard, recorded in November 1957. And these were really the first recordings that introduced Elvin Jones to the widespread jazz public. He had recorded before, but this was really where he got to stretch out, partially because, of course, he's playing with the one and only Sonny Rollins on tenor sax. The bassist is Wilbur Ware. So you really have guys who were making a new way of playing in a rhythm section.
Yeah.
I mean, no one played like Wilbur Ware, no one played like Elvin, and
Elvin loved Wilbur. In fact, when he had his, when he formed his own groups after he left Coltrane, he used Wilbur all the time.
Yeah. So let's listen to this from November 1957. We'll hear Softly as in a Morning Sunrise, Elvin Jones on drums, Wilbur Ware, and Sonny Rollins. In fact, we'll hear Sonny Rollins introduce Elvin right now.
Thank you. Elvin Jones on drums. Wilbur Ware on bass. We'd like to feature Wilbur right now in a little thing we hope you'll all be familiar with, Softly as in a Morning Sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we heard early Elvin Jones there with Wilbur Ware and Sonny Rollins. Mel?
Yeah. Now, first of all, Alvin was playing on brushes, and he was whacking those cymbals. You know, he had those nice old K Zildjians, and I used to look at his brushes after, you know, when he played. His brushes were bent up, terrible, you know, and of course you could hear all that noise he's making. That's his inner. He's shuffling inside. You see, if you notice, it's like a That's that middle beat of the grace of the triplet.
Really?
Yeah.
What middle note of what triplet?
Of his triplet. Da 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 da. Only he's
internalizing.
He's
it.
internalized it, and of course it comes audible, which drives people nuts. Actually, you know, especially if it's recording in a studio or something like that. It really, you know, you have to stuff some cotton in his mouth or something, you know, some a handkerchief or whatever. But that's the way he plays, and that's the way he feels it, you know, and that's why it's good, you know. I mean, it's that inner thing that Bob Brookmeyer always talks about when he's telling horn players how to feel that triplet, you know, and how they've got to have an inner feeling of the middle note, the middle, you know, you it's in your body, you know, you don't actually play it, and that's what he's doing. He's not playing it; he's singing it. He's feeling it inside.
Yeah,
you know. Now on his fours and stuff like that, now those got hung up, you know. Alvin has a tendency on fours to or eights or whatever to I mean he goes out. Now he knows where he is, you know, but he'll end on 4 instead of 1, you know, and it's a little rough for the other guys to figure out where the heck he is all the time, you know. But generally he's right. I mean, I've heard him mess up, you know, in live and all that, and he starts laughing, you know. But you know, it's a little hard it's a little difficult to even count it, you know. But I'd say most of the time he knows where he is, and it's just a little hard to feel for the other guys, you know. But like you hear like Wilbur coming in the wrong place there a couple of times, it's confusing. I didn't know where it was either, you know.
That's very abstract drumming on that track.
Totally.
Yeah,
but it's different, you know, and it's different, and it's him, and it's important, you know.
Yeah,
and he helped everybody. The sad thing is that Elvin's a very strong drummer, you know. He's not loud, but he plays hard. And I think too many young drummers figure, oh, Elvin Jones plays loud. He does not play loud. They play loud trying to imitate him, you know. He gets his intensity from another way, you know. He is not loud. He's a dynamic drummer, you know. It looks like he's playing loud, and he's all sweaty, you know, and he's making all that noise and all that. But he is not loud. Listen, I was on tour with him when I was with Dizzy, and he was with Train, and I listened to him every night, and he and I played on the same set of drums. And, you know, I don't play loud, and he didn't play loud. They really, I mean, and we talked about it all the time, about intensity and getting it from not playing loud. But you can get a strong feeling, and that's what he has. Very strong feeling.
Yeah. Let's hear another Thad Jones. This has Thad Jones on it. Elvin Jones track. By the way, slight correction. Elvin's going to be 62 this year.
62?
Yeah, he was born September 9th, 1927.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Which would mean that he would be...
he's 2 years older than I am.
Yeah. And we'll hear something that is from a Metro Jazz LP called Keeping Up with the Joneses, the Jones Brothers plus one. The one is another Jones, but not a relative, bassist Eddie Jones. But the other here are the famous Jones brothers, Hank, Thad, and Elvin. And this is from 1958, March 1958. And we'll hear one called 3 in 1 that has had a long history in the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis band, and now in Mel's band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a new version of it's going to be coming out on a Music Masters LP of Mel Lewis playing Thad Jones arrangements. It's going to be coming out in about a month and a half or so.
It's going to be called the definitive Thad Jones.
Yeah. And this is, I guess, the first recording of it, I believe. 3 in 1. And, well, we'll just hear from them. And there's a nice bunch of 4 bars traded here on this track. 3 in 1, the Jones Brothers, Hank, Thad, and Elvin, and Eddie Jones on the bass. right, and we heard 3 in 1, Keeping Up with the Joneses, Thad, Elvin, Hank, and bassist Eddie Jones. Any comments on that, Mel?
No, not much. It was just, see, Alvin just played straight ahead on that. He just played time, really. You know, he didn't get into what became his bag. You know.
Yeah.
There, he was just being what he was in the early days, just a good timekeeper and nice feeling and all that.
Where's he coming out of? Can you tell from? Is it reminiscent of anybody or?
Well, I would say.
Can you tell where his roots are?
I'd say,
during that?
in a way, I'd say out of Roy Haynes. You know, really, because Roy was the real first, you know, out drummer. You know, that could do all those things. You know, and I think he was coming out of there. You know, I really don't know who his favorites were. We never did really discuss them. One night he introduced Max Roach and Roy and me. We were all in the Vanguard one night to catch him with his group, and he said he introduced Max first, which was right, you know, and then he said, I'd like to introduce somebody. He says that doesn't realize how much I learned from him, what an influence he was on me in my early, and I thought he meant Roy, and it was me. He introduced me, and I was sure he was going to say Roy, you know, and later on I asked him, I said, what influence was I on you? He said, well, I heard you with Kenton's band, man. I heard that big wide triplet, and he says you were into something else with a big band. He says, and I liked it. I liked the feeling of that wide triplet you had. He said, you had such a wide beat. And he said, and that's what I wanted to work on, and I did.
Yeah.
I said, well, I got to admit that you influenced me, too. I learned to open up more and be, and try more with a big band, you know, which is difficult to do. I said, but of course you got to know the charge. You got to know when to stop and when to go, you know.
Right.
And I said, well, good. That we're good. Here we are, good friends, and we both influenced each other. That's nice, you know.
Yeah.
So, but my personal feeling is that Roy was the first, you know, let all hell break loose drummer. I mean, he really could do those things, and I think Alvin came out of that. I think he learned from that, but he developed his own way. He found his own voice, his own sound. Another a great signature drummer. I mean, he developed into Elvin Jones.
Yeah.
But this record that we just heard shows how he made his living in the early days, like, you know, played with JJ's group.
That's
and
right. Bud Powell,
Lenny Tristano.
Tyree Glenn.
Yeah. He could do it. And not only that, he could play with brushes and all that, and he could read a little bit, you know, as much as he had to.
Right.
And I know he was a teacher for a while. And I think, you know, he's living, in case a lot of you don't know why you haven't seen him in New York in ages. Alvin lives in Japan. He's got a home there, and I heard that he opened a drum school. So there's going to be a lot of young Japanese coming out of Japan playing like Elvin Jones.
It's 5 minutes after 2 o'clock. We're going to carry on now with Elvin Jones and turn to one of the very early recordings with John Coltrane. And this is where, you know, there's a moment, I guess, in every great artist's life where they find, you know, the right people. Just
exactly.
Something new happens, like Max Roach with Charlie Parker.
Yeah, being in the right
Joe
place.
Jones with Lester Young.
Being at the right place at the right time, you know.
Yeah, and here it happened with Elvin Jones. And one of the great pairings of all time was the pairing with John Coltrane. And we'll listen to one of the very early quartet items. In fact, this originally came out on an Atlantic record called Coltrane Jazz, where all the other...
with that rhythm section for a long time, and then so he decided to record. Those were his friends, you know.
Yeah.
And then later on, he decided to you know, get into his own thing, because actually those guys, Wynton Kelly and Jimmy Cobb and Paul Chambers formed their own trio and started working around.
That's right.
So everybody was going for themselves.
Yeah.
And I guess he found McCoy, and he found Alvin, which turned out to be one of the great combinations of all time.
Yeah.
All you needed was the two of them, really.
This is one of my favorite tracks, and this is where we'll hear exactly what Mel was just talking about with wide beat. I mean, this is it. This is called The Village Blues, and our first thing of Elvin and Train. Well, there we heard it, the Village Blues, Alvin with Train.
Yeah, that's
Early.
it. And there's that nice wide beat.
Yeah.
That's it.
Could you explain, for those folks who might not know exactly what you mean by a wide beat,
Well,
what a wide beat is?
it's a triplet. Jazz is based on a triplet. I mean on the 12/8, the feeling of 12/8, and there's you hear drummers playing da 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 da.
Right.
That's not 12/8. That's dotted 8/16 feeling. It's choppy and it's hard to make it swing. Then there's some that play da 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 because they think that's wide. Da 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 da. That ain't it either.
Yep.
It's just not it. But there's a feeling of bam bam ba bam ba bam 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 bam. So you're gonna bam da bam ba bam da bam ba bam da bam. It's a shuffle.
Right.
But if you think about it as bam da bam ba da bam da ba da ba da ba da ba da chicken chingon, that's a wide beat. In other words, you're using up, and it would be written as a triplet. Now, a lot of people don't know what a triplet is. They hear it, but they can't picture it, visualize it. So don't even try because it's silly to even bother. But for drummers who can read, when you see the top, say the cymbal line written with a dotted 8/16, a dotted eighth, and then a 16th note, and then a quarter. And you play it the way it's written, that's da 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 da. But if you see it written with an eighth note and an eighth rest and another eighth note and then a quarter note, you are looking at a triplet feel. You're looking at the widest feel you can get. And if you play it like it's written, the way it actually is, it's ba da 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 ba. And just, it's there. That's it. And that's what we're talking about.
Who were some of the drummers who, besides yourself with Stan Kenton, but going back to the swing drummers and the early Bob drummers, were there drummers who championed the wide beat?
No, Tiny Khan and me, actually. I think I was given credit for probably having the widest beat in those days because I really made a change in the style of big band drumming. I was going to a small group thing,
Yeah.
And not realizing I was even doing that, but I had been doing it before. I used to be accused of dragging.
Really?
Oh yeah, bass players say you're dragging, man. I say no, I'm not. You're rushing. I always give them some answer, because I wasn't going to sit back there and listen to that. And that's what I was doing unknowingly. I was developing a cymbal beat that was correct. It was right. But they didn't know it because everybody was into that ta 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 ta, and that isn't the way it was supposed to be, It worked fine if like Joe Jones could play less of a triplet because the combination of him and Freddie and the four-man rhythm team, it works, But in a three-man rhythm team, which is more like a small group thing, it doesn't work. And you got to open it up, and besides, true jazz playing, horn players, they don't play da ba da ba da ba. The old swing players played that way, and the Dixieland players. But the cats like Train and Charlie Parker and Lester, man, these guys played.
And Louis Armstrong.
They played triplet, almost straight. It's almost straight.
Right.
That's the way to play jazz lines, It's almost straight, but it's not straight. It's just short of straight. And it's a feeling. You got to have it. If you don't have it, you ain't got it, and that's all there is to it. And a good-sounding big band knows how to do that. See, when I was with Kenton made the band play with the straight 8 feel, but linear, smooth, not like rock and roll straight 8,
Right.
So my cymbal beat sort of worked. But then all of a sudden, the band would fall back into that real triplet, and he would get angry because it wasn't what he actually wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But if you listen to in the days when Shelley was with the band, and even Stan Levy, no matter how hard it swung, you could hear that they were playing da 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 da, because that's the way the band played. I refused. I just played. I said, well, that's the way I play. I can't sit there and think da 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 da. I'm not going to play that way.
Yeah.
And of course, I dragged the band back to the triplet, and that's why the band started to really swing too.
Yeah.
Because that's the way it should have been. And Al Pacino and people like that who were playing the lead chairs, they just came right in with me, you know. And that became my thing, you know. But I didn't make up my mind to do that.
No, it was natural for you.
Yeah. It was just a natural way of playing. And Alvin, I think it fell right. It was just perfect for him, you know.
You were around, in fact, you mentioned you were on the road right at the early days of this quartet when you were playing with Dizzy Gillespie in the early 1960s.
We were on tour together. He and I roomed together.
Well, you know, could you give us an idea about just in the jazz world what happened when this John Coltrane quartet and what the reaction was and how it sounded when you heard them night after night at that early stage before they were known as being one of the great
They had Eric
quartets.
Dolphy on the trip with them. Eric just came along. I think he just wanted to learn from Coltrane. And I used to hang out with John and Alvin. We'd go to John's room after the concerts, you know. And John would be sitting there. He had a guitar. He used to mess with this guitar all the time. And that's how he was finding out about changes, about inside and outside, you know. And we'd just sit and talk. His philosophy about playing was, I really can't remember the things he said, but it all fit with what he was doing, you know. And Alvin loved to talk to him. Alvin loved him, you know. I mean, they were, it was wild, you know. And we just sit and Alvin be drinking beer and Coltrane be eating fruit and nuts, you know. And it was wild because they were such opposite kinds of people. Really opposite. I mean, Alvin was a wild man, you know. He was doing everything he shouldn't do, and Coltrane was really Mr. Good Guy, you know.
Right.
And it was wonderful because they understood each other perfectly, you know. And I think that was very important. And listening to him every night, you know, I kept hearing more and more. You know, and Dizzy and I and all, and we'd stand on the side. When they were on, we were always on the side there, you know. And funny bit is, when we were on, they were standing on the side, listening, rather than back in the dressing room, you know. Everybody's listening to everybody. Because Dizzy had a good group. Dizzy was playing so good in those days. He was playing a straight trumpet.
Really?
When I was with him, yeah.
Huh.
And, of course, so his sound was, you know, as fat as a horse, as a cow. I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
A house.
A house, yeah. It was marvelous, you know. And Lalo Schifrin was the piano player and arranged a lot of the things we played. And Leo Wright, who was a big-sounding alto player, you know. Everything. And Bob Cunningham was playing bass, and we had a great group. And we were the stars. That was Coltrane's first trip over there. It was the Norman Granz sponsored thing, you know. And we were on second. They were on first. And
Who's on third?
Oh, what's on third? And the only thing that bugged me, and it bugged Alvin too, was the fact that Dolphy would sit in on, and it bugged Grants too. And I'm going to say it because it happened. You know, I mean, it's the truth. Is that, and John was always a giving person, even if it hurt him. He'd let the other guy play as long as he wanted to, and they always took advantage of him. You know, as a turn, you know, he'd play, and they played my favorite things practically every night, and that ended up being the only tune they played sometimes. Then they played, was it Naima or something like that, which they had to cut short all the time because we were limited to time, you know. And Norman once said to John, he says, John, can't you shorten these things up and give these people, play 3 tunes, you know, but Jesus, 2 is not very much. And John would always say, well, I'd like to. But what he was also saying is that if I could get Eric to quit playing so damn long, because it was Eric, with his bass clarinet, who would get out there and play forever. And certainly not better than Train. You know, no way.
Yeah.
And Alvin used to sit there mad. He'd look over at me and shake his head and say, God, how long is this going to go on, you know? Because it wasn't necessary, you know?
Yeah.
And Eric was a very, very nice man. I mean, so you couldn't get mad at him, you know. He liked to play, and he wanted to play. And he came out on that trip for nothing. He did it because he wanted to be with John, you know, and learn.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I admire him for that, because he made that whole tour for no money. I don't know about the flights and all that. I don't know who paid for that. But maybe Grants did. I don't know. But he didn't take any bread.
Hmm.
You know.
There are a lot of recordings of that tour. In fact, I had one scheduled to play next. It's right here. I pulled it out, and there's a Dexter Gordon record inside. So I unfortunately can't go to a recording of the very tour that Mel's talking about that happened in November 1961.
Right.
But we do have some other great classic recordings of Elvin Jones. And as you mentioned, they did play long, so we better get to the music, because otherwise we'll only have time for one tune, because there's only about half an hour left.
Yeah, I know.
So we're going to take one excerpt of a little solo. The drum solo from Pursuance from the record of Love Supreme with John Coltrane. We'll hear that. And then, I guess we will have to shorten it down. I'll pick a few more tracks. I was going to play a version of Impressions, but that's 15 minutes, and that would hardly leave us any time. But anyway, we'll start with the drum solo from Pursuance as we hear Elvin Jones in his prime with John Coltrane in the early 1960s.